Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. My name is Eleanor Cassetta, and I am the moderator for this session with our author of the hour, Lynda Hamblen. I would like to thank ReadersMagnet for sponsoring this unique event. This is a very interesting event because most book affairs are geared towards the publishers. ReadersMagnet has geared the Festival of Storytellers to the authors, and we are so grateful for that. I am the author of two books, one, Caregiver's Journey, which is a book about my 9.5 years of caring for my mother after she broke her hip at the age of 93, and she died in my home at the age of 102. And my second book is called, and the book that is featured here in the Festival of Storytellers, is Generations of Good Food. And Generations of Good Food is a compilation of 200 recipes for my Italian family. I would like to take care of just a little housekeeping, and then we're going to move on to our author of the hour. Please mute your computers. And if you have any questions for our author, please send them on the chat line, and we will get them from our production team. Our featured author is Lynda Hamblen. Lynda lives in Obion County, Tennessee. Did I say that wrong?
It's Obion.
Obion.
No one ever pronounces it right, so don't worry about that.
Okay, so Lynda lives in Obion County, Tennessee, with her husband and her cat, Henry the Mighty Mouser. And when she wrote the book, she was living with her cat, Elvira, and she will talk to you about Elvira. Lynda writes essays, poems, and short stories. Some have been published, many have not. And after having spent the last 30 years living with cats, Lynda decided to write a book about a cat's view of life, God, and eternity. So she wrote William and Tibby Forever. And William and Tibby Forever is her featured book at the Festival of Storytellers. The book starts out with catastrophic downfalls, heroic rescues, and daring catnappings. William and Tibby Forever depicts these and many other fur-raising events in the lives of William and Tibby, two cats who lived with their beloved second mom and her hun in a small gray house on the hill. In spite of vets, vaccinations, cat carriers, and beasts lurking in the garage, William and Tibby's life are as close to idyllic as life on this earth can be. But when William is killed, their idle life is shattered. When William next opens his eyes, he's in heaven. And before the hour is out, he has moved in with his third mom, her sweetie pie, and all 13 of his second mom's previous cats. There, William strives to earn his halo. The undertaking involves coping with his eccentricities of other cats, resisting the temptation of the third mom's pet rabbits and chickens, and making peace with the terrible Han. Meanwhile, Tibby must contend not only with her grief for William, but also of an indomitable kitten named Elvira. And when an illness threatens Elvira's life, the whole family must pull together to save her. From their experiences, William and Tibby learn that life holds joy, sorrow, laughter, tears, leave-taking, and reunion. William and Tibby Forever is a heartwarming story about the love of a mother for her children, the love of a man for a woman, and the love of that woman for her cats. It is a story about a life that never ends and love that never dies. That is so neat.
Thank you.
Welcome, Lynda. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to the Author of the Hour. Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. So tell us about Lynda and tell us about your book. We have an hour, please.
Okay.
The
Well,
floor is yours.
okay. First of all, let me talk about the cover of my book.
Show us your book. Show us your book.
Here is William and Tibby Forever. Now, there are two cats. This one is Tibby. Oh, excuse me, this one. It can also be William. They look exactly alike. There was a little difference. I could tell them apart, but nobody else could. But I didn't want two cats that looked exactly alike on my book cover, so I put William and Tibby, and the other one is Elvira, or this one right here. Well, I'll get there in a minute. This one. So, and that's pretty much the way they look, and you can see the attitude in their eyes. Elvira is very direct and forthright and commanding, and Tibby is a little softer and just a softer personality, you might say. But they lived together for several years, and so they each have their story in the book. And at the time that I was writing the book, I started the book. William and Tibby were alive, and after William's death, as I said, I got Elvira, and she was alive for quite a few years after I finished the book. And the bio lists her as the cat that I had at the time I wrote the book, but she died of, she was 19 years old, and she was three-legged, she was deaf, and she went blind, and but she kept hanging on. And then when she lost her sense of smell, it was devastating to her, because cats' sense of smell is their most important sense. That's how they mainly navigate through life, that the smell and the senses. And so when she lost her sense of smell, the only reality that she had for herself was touch. And since I couldn't be touching her all the time, she had no idea where I was in the house. And I couldn't stand to think of that, her having to go through that kind of a reality. So I had her put to sleep, and which was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I planned to get another cat, but I had some physical problems I wanted to take care of first, but life doesn't always do what we want it to. And this black cat walked into my sister's house one day unannounced through the cat door, and just made himself at home. I mean, it was just as if that was his house. And the cat that they have is a male, and here Henry was a male, and he didn't want anybody in his territory, so I offered to take Henry, and I took him home. I found out immediately he was a mouser. He caught a mouse the first night. He's killed about 10 mice since we've been here. Now, the mice are not in my house. They're outside in the fields, but he brings them, and every mouse he catches, he brings in. Sometimes they are alive, and I have to catch them and put them back outside. I take them to the ditch across the road and drop them down there and say, don't come back. He is a loving cat. I know he belonged to somebody, but to be that loving, when I lie in my recliner, he'll lie on my chest and just purr and purr and purr. But he brought some bad habits with him too. He likes to get on the counters when there's food around. He likes to drink out of my drinking cup. But we're working on that. Not very successfully, but we're still working on that. But I'm so glad I have him in my life. I think God sent him to me. I needed another cat, and I was time for me to have another cat. And so I'm just, if he crosses,
about how you send him, how you have the mice outside. Tell our listeners about your farm. You have you have enough acreage that the mice will live on your farm.
Oh yes. Well, we live in an area full of wheat and corn and soybeans. So if you live in that kind of an area, in a rural area like that, you're going to have mice because they eat the grain. And I happen to believe, and this is one of the things I express in my book, that all creatures are holy to God. He made them. They are part of him. They are part of his expression of himself in the universe. So I don't think that you should ever kill an animal just to kill it, but you have to be reasonable. I don't want to kill the mice, but that's God's plan. That's what he does. For instance, when I see a bug crawling around in my yard, I don't step on it. I just leave it alone. It's got to let it mind its own business. That's what I mean by all little animals are sacred to God. And you'll get that. You'll know what I mean if you read my book and when I talk about the fleas that are on the cats. But anyway, so we have a 26-acre farm. It's we used to grow cattle on it, and I had a fence that kept the cattle in. Now we just raise pasturage for hay. So David took down the fence, and now I have a 26-acre yard behind me. But that's okay. I can tell where the yard ends and the hay begins. But that's our life, and the life is just basic farm life. You know, I remember reading one of the reviews about my book, and it was pictured by the reviewer as a picture of a quaint existence on a farm. And I thought, well, this is not a quaint existence on the farm. This is the existence that most people on farms live. So, and my husband is an attorney by trade, but the farm is his pastime, his hobby. He's always lived here on this farm. This is where he's lived all his life for the most part.
How many kids and grandkids do you have?
I have 2 children. Of course, they're in their late 40s and 50s, which hurts me to say that. I can't believe I have children that old.
Babies anymore, Mama?
No. And each of them have 2 children, a boy and a girl. And unfortunately, one of the children in each of the families is allergic to cats. But they cannot have cats in their house because they are allergic. They have dogs instead. And when they come to my house, they get to love my cats. Well, they get to love Henry. My other 2 cats that I had before that, Tibby and Elvira, were rather reclusive. And the only one that made friends with Elvira was my little granddaughter, Nora, who was about 4 at the time, that she noticed Elvira for the first time. And she and Elvira became good friends. And in fact, it got to the point where Elvira could pet her, and she would go in and pet her. And the day before Elvira became blind, she was petting Elvira in Elvira's favorite chair by the living room window, and she licked Nora, which is my granddaughter, on the hand. And Nora was so excited and happy, and she said, Grandmama, Elvira licked me on the hand. And I said, well, Nora, that's a great compliment. That means she trusts you. And she just, I hope that memory lives in her mind as much as it's going to live in mine. But the next day after that, Elvira went blind. She has kidney problems, and that's often occurs when a cat has kidney problems. And then after that, she lost her hearing. And then about 6 months, about 6 months ago, she lost her sense of smell. And for a cat, a sense of smell is the most important sense. That's how they tell where they are. And she didn't know where she was. She would meow for me and I would go into the bedroom where she stayed most of the day. And she would just be going around in circles because she had lost her bearings and she couldn't smell her way to her food bowl or to her bed or to her litter box. And I didn't know at the time that she had lost her sense of smell. It took me a while to catch on. And the only sense she had left was a sense of touch. I couldn't hold her all the time. So I decided that her body was trying to die and I needed to let her go. And so I took her to the vet and I let her go. And I buried her body on the creek bank where I buried all my other cats that have died. And I let her soul go to heaven. And there are a lot of people who question me about animals in heaven. I've had 2 or 3. And one said, well, how do you know that animals are in heaven? And I said, well, it says somewhere in the Bible, Jesus says that the lion shall lie down with the lamb. I don't think that's going to take place on earth. I think that's going to take place in heaven. So, and now it just may be lions and lambs that are going to be in heaven, but I prefer to assume that there are going to be some cats there too. So and she was so relieved when I said that, because she had a cat and she was worried about, well, what's going to happen to the cat when she dies? Is she just going to cease to exist? So she was so happy when I told her that. Oh, so now she has hopes that her cat can go to heaven when it dies. So.
What, and this is just a off the cuff kind of comment, ask you, is when your grandkids come, do they ever bring their dogs?
Well, they didn't. They would bring them sometime, but they would have to stay outside.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while, if it was really cold or something, I would let them in a room, and they had to stay in that room. Now, my cats would know they were in the house. They could smell them, but they would be okay with it as long as
they didn't.
Dogs stayed in the room.
They were away from them.
Yeah. Once in a while, the dog would escape the room because, the kids are going in and out. And then they would head to the back bedroom because they could smell the cat's food, which is where I put it when the dogs were here. They weren't interested in the cats. They were interested in the cat's food. But of course, the cats didn't know that. And I have a section in a section of my book which describes what happens when a little dog gets into the bedroom where the cats are. And I would like to say that in that little episode, the dog gets its comeuppance from Tibby, but it doesn't do that again. But that's
you know what? The cat is the ruler of the domain.
Yes, you are exactly right. And people have the mistaken assumption that cats aren't affectionate like dogs are, and dogs are affectionate. They always want to be with the alpha male of their group, and that's the owner. Cats aren't like that. They want affection and love, but they want it on their terms when they want it. And so you have to respect what a cat needs and wants. And if I want to hold my cat, I walk over slowly to him and softly and talk to him gently and put my hand out and stroke him, and then I'll slowly pick him up, and he's okay with that. But I don't just go over to him and grab him. And I taught my grandchildren very early, when they were old enough to learn, that if you want to pet one of my cats, that would be on the bed. I said, if they would open the door and there they'd be on the bed. And I had to keep the cats away from the ones that were allergic to cats. So I would just shut them up in their room, and they were fine because they had a window they could go in and out of, and they had their food, and they preferred it if there were children about to be in their room. And so I told them, when you open the door and you see the cats on the bed, go very slowly, talk very softly. And they would eventually learn to do that. But I had one child, Luke, when he started learning how to do that, he would just get so excited. He could get about halfway across the room and talking softly, walking slowly, and then he just couldn't stand it anymore. He'd rush at of course, the cats immediately abandoned the bed and fled to the bathroom. And I was saying, now, Luke, what did you do that the cats didn't like? And he always knew it. He just couldn't control himself. He finally made it. He finally got enough stuff.
Funny.
So,
What was your inspiration for writing William and Tibby Forever?
Well, as I said, I got 2 cats, William and Tibby, when they were about 2 months old. You shouldn't get a cat before they're 2 months old because they need their mother. She teaches them how to behave socially, and they need her. So I waited till they were about 8 weeks old and brought them home and let them be inside-outside cats. I know that it's safer to let them be inside cats, but I think a cat should be allowed, if possible, to live the life of a cat, to live the life that God meant him to live. And so I let them go in and out. And I know there are risks, being run over, being caught by a coyote, attacked by a dog. But that's part of life. And I want them to have that experience. But anyway, I let them out at night one night, and William was run over. I think what happened was a male cat was chasing him away from Tibby, and he ran, and he was killed. And so we took him, my husband and I took him down to the cemetery and buried him. And I was coming up from the house, and I thought, here I am, I'm 50 years old, and I still have grief, terrible grief about losing someone I love, mostly because of the loss of that physical presence, the finality of that presence, that you are never going to be with that cat again on this earth. And if I have that much trouble with as much faith as I have in the afterlife, how much more devastating is that to a small child who has lost a pet for the first time, or someone he loves for the first time? So I thought I would sit down and write a children's book, and I would show, illustrated, and I would show William and Tibby and me living together, they being petted, playing, hunting, me washing clothes, vacuuming, petting them. Mm-hmm. And then William dies and he goes to heaven. And then I would show William doing his things in heaven, learning to follow the rules, learning to know the other cats. And then show Tibby and me continuing on as we had before, and then at the very end, we're all three reunited in heaven. So I sat down to write the book. I wrote 10 pages, and I hadn't even gotten Tibby to my house yet. So I knew I wasn't going to have a children's book. I was going to have a novel. And I would like to write that book one day and find an illustrator for it and try to sell it. But I just haven't gotten to that point yet. But
was William a good cat?
Oh yes, he was wonderful. In some ways, he reminds me of William. Now, I mean, of Henry. Henry is a very frenetic cat. He never stops going. If he's awake, he's doing something, playing with a toy. I have a little cat hammock for him in the living room. If you're supposed to sleep in it, he plays with it as a toy and sends it all over the room and drags it. You know, that's the kind of cat he is. So he's not quite as boisterous, I would say, as as Henry. But everywhere I went in the house, he followed me. If I was in a room, he followed me. And a very, very loving cat. I just losing him was hard. I tend to grow attached to my cats. And Tibby, she didn't eat, she wouldn't sleep, she wouldn't play. She just stared out the dining room window, waiting for William to come back, because how do you tell a cat that your brother's not coming back home?
Well, that's true.
And I think she finally realized that he wasn't coming back. But of course, she didn't know about death or heaven, but she just knew he was not coming back. And I just could not let her grieve herself to death. Animals can grieve themselves to death. So I went and got Elvira. And I have that, I talk about that in my book, Tibby and Elvira meeting for the first time. But I went and got Elvira to get her out of her grief. And it woke her up. She immediately woke up. She had to deal with reality. She had to deal with Elvira. She couldn't ignore her. And I write about the process of their getting to become friends in the book. A lot of this book that I wrote, William and Tibby Forever, is based on what happened with me and my cats. There's a lot of fictional parts, and I added and subtracted and did like that, but a lot of it really happened. So there's it's largely autobiographical from the cat's point of view.
We have a message for you from the audience.
Oh, okay.
And it's from Angeline, your little sister, who says, I'm
Okay.
watching you live on YouTube. You're doing great.
Oh, well, thank you, Angeline. Thank you, Angeline. I'm glad you're watching.
um, so who do you think your audience is going to be for your book?
Well, I think anyone of any age, I would say from 4th or 5th grade on, because it's just because of the reading difficulty. It's a very readable, easy book. You can finish it if you're a fast reader in 2.5 hours. I think anyone who wants a realistic love story about a family, husband, wife, and the cats are our children, and how we cooperate, how we get along, how we share things, how we make compromises. For instance, David doesn't really particularly care for cats, but he accepts my cats. And he doesn't dislike cats. He just doesn't care for animals in the house. And but he accepts them. This is what I want, and he realizes it's my house too.
Mm-hmm.
Then he doesn't want, so he accepts them in the house. And in his life, he has to watch where he walks. One night I was gone, and William and Tibby were hungry, and David hadn't fed them. So they jumped into his lap to remind him that they needed something to eat. But anyway, I like to keep my cats in the bedroom with me at night. I'm not supposed to because I have cat allergies, believe it or not. But David didn't want them in the bed at night in the room, so I don't let them come in. I close the door, and that's really hard. But it's his house too, and we make compromises, and that's what a good marriage is: sharing, making compromises, being kind, and I think all that we show that in the book. It's a realistic love story. It's about the way a marriage really operates, a family really operates. And it covers existence from birth, growing up, becoming an adult, becoming old. I become old in the book. Cats become old and die. And then it shows the life beyond. So it covers all stages of existence. So I think anybody that wants just a realistic, real love story, anyone that wants to read a book, as one of my readers described it, it's a book full of hope and humor. And I think that's true. If I could take a minute, I could read an example or two from my book, about a paragraph of showing what I mean by the cat's point of view and a little bit of humor.
We have a question from John.
Joe.
What is the first book that made you cry?
Oh, heavens. I think probably, knowing what I've read, the first book that made me cry was probably Heidi. No, because she has to leave her grandfather. And I think I cried there. I know, I'm pretty well sure I cried. And I read that book several times, even when I was rereading it. I think I probably cried.
There you go, John. What do you want people to take away from your book?
Well, I want them to take away an acceptance that life is not always going to be good, but you can get through it, and appreciation of all of God's creation. I want them. I think people sometimes we forget to look at the trees and the flowers and the little bugs crawling around in the grass and the little spiders hanging from the spider web. They all have a place, and we need to look at that with that point of view, and be considerate of them. And you have to be realistic, but at the same time, you don't set out to slaughter every spider on your house. They're there for a reason. They eat the flies, and everything. I want them to come away with an appreciation of the fact that everything is an expression of God's existence. Everything on this earth, everything out there in the universe, everything is an expression of God, and we need to respect and honor that. And I guess that sounds serious, but the book is told in, like one reader said, it's told with hope and humor. And I think that's what I want them to come away with. And a gladness that they read a joyful book, even though it has tears in it and it's got death in it. Overall, it's a joyful book written by a joyful woman.
There you go. What is the overall theme of this little book?
Well, I would say that the overall theme is that life is full of opposites. There's happiness and there's sorrow. There's laughter and tears. You are united and then you are torn apart. But that for everything that ends, every part of your life that ends, there's always another beginning awaiting you. And you have to accept. You say goodbye to the part that is ended, even though it may be heartbreaking to you. And you say hello to the new part that comes. Like I had to say goodbye to Elvira, and that was hard. But now I have said hello to Henry, and that's so joyous. And that's what life is like. And you just have to accept it and don't think that it's always going to be sorrowful. Laughter is going to come. You're never going to see that person again or that animal again or live in that house again, but you're going to have another house, another person, another animal, and you just have to accept it all.
You're quoting pretty much the book of Ecclesiastes.
Oh, really? Well, I didn't know it was a biblical scholar.
Yeah.
But that's true, that's true. And when you're 73, I'm telling my age here.
Whoops.
When you're 73, you know that. You've learned that. When you're 23,
it doesn't
30,
matter.
you haven't learned it yet. Life is you learn the little things that matter. There's a saying that the important thing in life is to find out what the important thing is, and that's what life is about. You grow. You find out what is important.
Do you plan on writing another book?
Well, at the time that I wrote William and Tibby, I started William and Tibby, like I said, after William died, and I wanted to write that children's book, and I didn't plan for it to turn into a novel, but it did. I had two other novels actually three that I had begun, and I haven't yet taken up returning to them. I also have a lot of stories that I had started before I started William and Tibby, and I'd like to get them worked up and sent out. But the two books that I wrote, they're kind of fantasies, kind of like my idea of heaven is a fantasy in William and Tibby. One is about a woman who's in a store in a mall, and she's in a kind of a Chinese themed store, and she looks at this other woman in the mirror, and then as she's walking down going down the escalator after she leaves the store, she looks down at her feet, and they're not her feet, they're the feet of the woman that she saw in the store, and she's wearing what she has traded places with that woman, and the other woman has traded places with her, and it's the ramifications of no one will believe that they're not who they say they look like, that they're someone else, and what happens there. And I had about 3 chapters written, and then I left it to write the story. Then I have another story of which a wizard is being he lives in a town that is beset by this dragon, and it takes place at the beginning of the Renaissance, when people started giving up beliefs in dragons and turned towards belief in rationality and reason. But for some reason, this town can't seem to get rid of this dragon after several attempts. So he goes forward in time, and he ends up in New York City, and he's looking around at all these people. He can't believe the life of New York and what the people look like, especially the women, so strong and independent. And so he's trying to figure out which person would be a good person to take back in time with him. And he chooses this blonde-headed, very tall, slim, elegant female. She's a lawyer. And he persuades her that she needs to go kill the dragon. So, and that's the point that I've got to right now. So, I think I'd like to finish them. They sound like fun books. I don't like to write anything that bores me.
You write short stories,
Mm-hmm.
like the ones you're telling us.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you? Would you ever think of putting together a book that was a compilation of short stories?
Oh, yes, I certainly would. In fact, several of the stories that I have written have the same character, and and all of them are set in a small southern town. Yes, I would like to do that. They would all fit together. They're all a little eccentric, filled with eccentric characters, uh, and it's just, for instance, one of the stories is about this little redheaded boy. I have a redheaded son, and it's kind of based on him as a child. And a little redheaded boy. His family moves from Nashville to this small town uh, in West Tennessee, and he sets out the morning after they've moved to see what's out there in this town. And on the way, he passes by this old house, and its paint is chipping. It's 2 or 3 story house, and he hears this voice, "Come here, little boy, come here." Well, it's coming from the porch. And of course, he's been told not to go in onto the porches of strangers, but this voice is so commanding that he has to go. And it turns out that he meets two uh, twins. I call them the Tilly twins, Eula and Beulah Tilly. And he gets to know them. And the story is about his relationship with them over a period of like 20 years. And
Ooh, long
it's
time.
it's really good. I think it's a really good story. And
So you have short stories about that
mhm.
20-year period of time. Is that what
Mhm.
you're thinking in your mind?
Yes, yeah. I have another story. For instance, this one is her name about a woman. Her name is Miss Bigham, and she takes it into her head one morning to go visit an aunt and uncle on her husband's side that she hasn't seen in quite a while, and it's the hottest day of the year. And she was waxing floors when suddenly she remembered that she hadn't seen them in a while. So she puts away her wax brushes and gets dressed and goes to see them. And it's the things that happen while she's on the visit with them that's the really heart of the story. And and it's just, it's like a southern town going out. It's just a small store, small people in a small town, and she goes to visit them. It's full of southern ways, full of southern traditions. You in the South, you don't lose contact with your family. That's one of the biggie things.
Have you always wanted to be a writer?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, I haven't, I have to admit. I did a lot of reading, but when I was about 25 or 26, I had this nagging feeling there was something that I wasn't doing that I wanted to do, but I was real restless and I couldn't pin it down. And then my husband and I moved to Memphis where he could go to law school, and I entered the graduate department of English. And one day I was doing something, and all of a sudden it came to me. I think I'd like to try writing. And of course, I was in graduate school at the time and taking care of my hubby and my 2 sons in my house and studying. So I really didn't have time to do a lot of writing, but I just wrote when I could. And then after I retired, uh, I had to retire early because of illnesses. After I retired and I quit teaching, and my children had gone from the house. They had moved out. I had more time to write. And so I started really being more productive. And I've got mountains and mountains of stories and poems and 3 books that, I just haven't. It used to be a real headache to try to get published. You had to find a publisher or a magazine that wrote like you wanted, and you couldn't go on the internet and find out because there was no internet. You had to do all your research at the library, look at them, and it just was such a time-consuming ordeal that I just tended, if I have a little time, I'd rather write than market my book. Now that you have the internet, it's much easier. You can, you've got a lot more knowledge right at your fingertips.
And now that we have ReadersMagnet.
Oh, ReadersMagnet has been wonderful. I mean, they are so easy to work with. And if you have a question, if they don't know the answer, they will find it.
Yes.
And they will get back with you. They are so good. Yes.
I agree. So you have a graduate degree in English.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you teach? What did you teach?
Well, I taught first before I had my graduate degree, just right out of college. I taught at Fulton City High Schools in Kentucky, a very small school of 200 students. And I loved teaching there. And the only reason that I quit was that we were moving to Memphis. So obviously, then I taught in the graduate department as a teaching assistant when I was in graduate school. And I enjoyed that. But it was a little bit different than teaching in a small school, because in a small school, I knew all the students. Mm-hmm. I taught English. I was the only English teacher. I had all the students eventually. And if they wanted to graduate, they had to graduate my class. They had to
go through you.
They had to go through me. Yes. But after and I preferred the high school because you get to know the kids so much. They want your approval, and they want you as a friend, but not a friend like a pal friend, that someone they can talk to, someone they can share things with. And I like that part of it. So when I got back to Memphis with my husband, I think we had $14 in our bank account. And of course, so he couldn't afford to hire a secretary. So I was his secretary for like 4 years. And I think I was a pretty good one. I think I knew how to type.
And it was
work. Yes. And then I was offered a job in Union City High School because they needed a French teacher and they couldn't find one. And they knew that I had taught French. I don't know how they knew that, but they did. And they called me one day, and I taught there for like 6 years, and then I had to quit because of medical problems. But I loved teaching. I really missed the students when I had to quit. I really missed them.
So now we know you not only taught English, but you taught French. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other languages that you speak besides French?
No, I speak cat.
Oh my gosh. We have an audience member from Turkey.
Oh, wow.
And the message is, thank you for sharing, Lynda.
Oh, well, I have on Facebook, I don't know how many friends abroad. If a person wants to be my friend on Facebook, I accept him. And I don't necessarily talk to them. What I do on Facebook is I write little posts about me, my husband, and my cats. I'm not going to say anything controversial unless people don't like cats and they may not agree with me. But that's all. I don't do. So I don't care who's my friend. I have friends from all over the world. I don't even know who they are. I don't speak their language. I don't know how they got a hold of me, but they're all welcome. And so I'm so glad that you are listening to this show. And I hope I don't have to speak Turkish.
Well, we're in trouble if we do.
Well, yes.
In your opinion, Lynda, what are the most important elements of good writing?
Well,
now that I know that you're an English teacher, what are the most important elements of writing?
Well, you want good sentence structure and you want good grammar, but you can get people to help you with that. Mm-hmm. I think the most important element of writing is to write something you really want to write. I could never be a freelance writer, and there's nothing against that, but people who are freelance writers have a wide variety of topics they write about. I don't want to be a nonfiction writer. I want to be a fiction writer that I can write what I want with heart. I want to write with heart. And I think writing with heart is probably the most important element, but you've got to do your editing, you've got to do your proofwriting, reading, you've got to rewrite. All of that goes into making a good writer, and you've got to have convincing characters and a sustainable plot. But it's the heart comes first. And if you have the heart, the rest will come.
Would you, I had a session Friday with a lady who just writes poems. Would you ever
Okay.
write a book of poetry?
Yeah, I think I would like a book of poetry. If
Can
I
you
could,
write
I
poems
don't.
about your cats?
Yes, I have some poems about my cats. I have some poems about mice. I don't just write about animals. I just write. I have to be motivated to write the poem. If somebody gave me a say, I want you to write a poem about this, I can't. I have to want to write it myself.
Okay.
And I just write. I write from just anything that occurs to me that I want to write about. Uh, so, but yeah, I have several poems, I think, and I've had a few poems published. But like, I just hate marketing things. It just takes so long, like I said. But yeah, I would like to put it together, a book of poetry together. And I don't write in the modern way. Now, I don't always rhyme, but my poetry tends to be very accessible to read, and it's not hard to understand. And just the way I write. Um, um,
What comes first, the plot or the characters?
For me, I think it is the characters. The character will come, and then you think, for instance, the story of Eula and Beulah, Tilly, and the little boy that moves to town. I have a twin sister that we're identical, and we were visiting one another one day, and for some reason I started saying, no, I need to write a book about a story about twins that are. And then I think they'll be old, and I think they're going to live in this house that's really old, and also, and their family fortunes are in decline, and so they're not able. And we just went from there, but it was mainly based on getting the little boy. He had to have a certain demeanor about him, and he had to come across a certain way. It's definitely a character for me. But I was reading or hearing a writer talk one time, and the thing that was most important to her was place. She would see a place, and she was a mystery writer or a crime writer, and start writing about that place, seeing it as a setting for some kind of crime or mystery. So I think it just varies with each writer. It's going to, but for me, it's character.
How do you handle writer's block? Do you ever get it?
No, I never. I'm sorry, I don't. Well, now, okay, I get writer's block. I always have something I want to write, but once, as an example, the story about the women and the little boy, I knew how I wanted it to start. And I got to the point where the little boy is on the porch talking to the women, and they give him some tea. They give him some lemonade and some cookies. And it's there. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to show a relationship between a young child and two older women, but I didn't know how I wanted to develop that. So I put it away for like 2 or 3 months and got busy on something else. And then one day I just took it out and went back to where they were on the porch and continued the story. And I didn't know when I got it out what I was going to say, but it just kept unfolding.
Do you write every day?
No. You do not have to write every day to be successful, in my opinion. Life gets in the way.
Do you keep a journal?
I keep a journal. I don't write in any one thing every day. It just, as it strikes me, and it's, I've had a lot of illness, a lot of surgeries, a lot of deaths in my family. All those things interfere with writing. I write when I can, and I don't when I can't, and I live with that. And some people say you've got to write every day, and that may work for them. But if I set myself a goal, I've got to write every day, it's going to become a job, a chore. I don't want it to become that. To me, that I would feel such pressure. And then if I couldn't manage that, I would be so frustrated, because I'm a goal achiever. When I set out to do something, I want to do it. I would become so frustrated. So I can't write every day. But I know that I might not write today, but maybe I will tomorrow. Maybe life will work out tomorrow and I'll be able to write.
So then if you get into a pattern, so let's say you don't write for a couple of weeks, then all of a sudden something comes to you. Will you write for 2 or 3 days or 4 days or a week?
Well,
after
The reason that I'm not writing is not because I don't have something to write. It's because I can't get to it because of other things I have to do. Like, if one of my sisters gets sick and she needs my help, I'm going to be there.
Right.
If I need, or I had a nephew who was visiting me last week, and I had to go with his father to pick him up at the airport and then take him home back to the airport a week later. Now, when I got home, I wasn't able to write. I was too tired. I have to take a nap every day. Just one of those things I have to do. And I was too tired and zapped out. I couldn't write. And I didn't beat myself up about it. Like I said, I'm probably going to write something tonight because I'm feeling really good and up and having an enjoyable experience. I hope everybody else is sharing my enthusiasm.
I think it's.
But I just write when I can, and I just let life go, let life flow. And when I get done, I get done, and when I don't, I don't.
How do you come up with your title? How do you come up with the titles for your books?
I don't know. I don't know. William and Tibby Forever. I wanted to express the fact that these two animals are together forever. So I was writing a book about William and Tibby. I was writing a book about they're going to be together forever. So I just thought, well, William and Tibby Forever. It just sounded like a good combination.
Will you write a book about Elvira?
Oh, I would love to one day. Now, she is in my book, of course. She plays a big part in my book. To write a book about her by itself, I might have enough, having already written about her in the book, I might have a hard time. Here comes my cat. I saw her go down the sidewalk. Sorry. But anyway, he may be coming in pretty soon. But I would have probably a hard time just coming up with enough material all over for her. But I will probably write, if I have the chance, I'll write a book about cats again. I write about what I just want, and I never know what it's going to be. So anyway, she's meowing. You might hear her. Hi, Henry.
Oh, let's see Henry. Pick Henry up. Let's see Henry.
Henry, you want me to pick you up?
We're going to get to see Henry the Mighty Mouser. Oh, Henry's a black cat.
Yeah, he's black. And Henry, you're going to meet 2,000 people today. He is totally uninterested in the people that are watching him. He's got lots more important things to do. But he is such a loving cat. He is so good.
Oh, you got a black Bart.
Yeah, I have Elvira was a tortoiseshell. She was very dark. Then I had a cat that called Dorca that was black like this one. So he is really my third black cat. And I have a chair that was on my grandmother's porch when I was a child, and she shelled beans in it every day in the summer. And when she died and the house broke up, I took the chair and I have it in my dining room. And the three black cats that I had, Dorca, Elvira, and Henry, all sit in that chair.
How funny is that? That's
I have photos of all three of them sitting in the chair. So I think one day on Facebook, I'm going to put the three pictures and I'm going to say which one is Dorca, which one is Elvira, and which one is Henry, because they look so much alike. And I thought that would be fun to do. Say bye, Henry.
The audience wants to know if you have a dog, and I think I could answer that.
No, I don't have a dog. I have nothing against dogs, but I just don't have one. I don't know why. I think it would. I just don't think that it would work with cats and dogs. Although if you have a cat that's very young and a dog that's very young, you can introduce them and they might become friends. I just never thought about having a dog. I'm not anti-dog. I like dogs. We had dogs when I was growing up. We didn't have cats. So we had cats like in the barn. We had cats in the barn and stuff like that, but we didn't have inside cats.
So you had feral cats that were out in the barn.
That's right. Yes. So I don't know how I became obsessed with cats, if that's the right word. but this is the way I am. And I had a brother that was that way. He loved cats. But I had a sister that had dogs. So two sisters. So
How funny. How funny.
it's just the way things turned out. So
I love it. I love it. We have 6 minutes, so let's use a few more minutes, and then I'll close it out, and we can close it out together with Henry.
Okay, Henry,
help us. Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience or me about you or your books? And
well, let me give some advice to would-be writers or writers who are just getting started, because it's so discouraging. If you start writing, nobody is seeing your work more than likely.
No.
You're writing it all alone, and it's not at the stage where you can show it to people. It's very easy to become discouraged. You just have to persevere. All you have to do is put one word at a time on that page. And even if all you get is a line, you're a line further than you were before you began. And another thing that will help is to buy a magazine about writing. It's showing you the writing process. How do you, the importance of rewriting, how do you send something to a publisher? What's the format of sending something to a publisher or an editor? That will help you with all those things. That's very helpful. Join a writing group, one that offers constructive criticism. I didn't like this part of your story because, not just, I didn't like that in your, you want constructive criticism. And then the basic thing is to read. You've got to read, particularly if you know you want to write romances, read romances. And then you write. Then most important part, rewrite. I wrote William and Tibby 10 times.
Wow.
I rewrote it. Smoothing it out.
I had my first book reviewed by family members, since it was about my mother, and of course they all knew my they all walked the journey of 9.5 years taking care of my mother with me. And what came back was, you need to take out a lot of parts, because you could say what you have to say without saying what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then my advice would be that it should be professionally edited. Now you're a English major, but my advice is that you need more than one set of eyes.
True.
To look at a manuscript to determine if it's going to be good. And I know a lot of people submit stuff and say, well, my brother read it, or my neighbor read it, and then when it doesn't fit together, it may be too late in the process.
Yes, that's true. That is a bonus for me. I was an English teacher, and I knew that you had to have a pattern. You had to have, beginning, middle, ending, and it had to stick together. And you're right. It is easier for me. Well, if I don't like the way a sentence sounds, I won't stop until I get it right. I am a perfectionist in that. I have to have that sentence right before I will accept it.
Try again.
Yes, and you have an ear when you have that sentence right. You have the ear. You like the way it sounds. And I don't like clunky sentences.
Well, I think this has been a great interview, Lynda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, your audience has loved it, and we've got to meet Henry the Mighty Mouser.
Yes.
I would like to take a couple minutes to, and you can chime in whenever you wish.
Okay.
I would like to thank ReadersMagnet for the opportunity to have these Author of the Hours. Lynda is our next to the last. We have 2 more for today, and then we will have another 21 or 22 sessions next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we invite the audience to come back next weekend when we will meet more of our authors. Do you have a booth at the?
Yes, I have a booth.
Okay, so you can visit Lynda's William and Tibby Forever booth. You can visit my Generations of Good Food Forever booth. And thank you, ReadersMagnet management and staff, for all the work and effort you have put through. You're just a wonderful organization. I thank you. Do you have any? We got 30 seconds. You got something you want to say?
Well, I have a website with a blog. It's www.williamandtivvybook.com. And I'm on Facebook. Find me on Facebook.
And I have a website, www.onecaregiversjourney.com. So I thank you. Come back for more Author of the Hour interviews. And you and Henry have a great rest of your day.
We will. Henry will anyway, I can assure you.
Bye for now.